You're listening to the Divorce and Your Money Show, the #1 divorce podcast in the United States. I'm your host, Shawn Leamon, MBA and certified divorce financial analyst. Be sure to get a copy of my new book called, surprise, surprise, Divorce and Your Money, How to Avoid Costly Divorce Mistakes. You can get a copy on Amazon or by visiting divorceandyourmoney.com. While you're on the website, be sure to book a strategy session with me. We have 30-minute strategy sessions, and you have two options. One in which where you can just speak directly about issues that apply to you, regardless of whether you're at the beginning of the divorce, thinking about what you want to do, in the middle, trying to figure out the right path to take, or at the end of your divorce and you're trying to figure out the best options for you. And also there we have a document review appointment where we can review your financial affidavit, your divorce settlement, or other documents related to your divorce, and also include a strategy session on top of that to make sure that whatever you're preparing or about to sign is in your best interest. With that, on to this week's episode. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I pay for this divorce process? And regardless of your income and assets and et cetera, oftentimes one spouse may not have access to the funds, even though you know that once this divorce is over, you'll have money available to live your life. And so if you're the person who doesn't have full access to the marital funds or enough access to marital funds to pay for the short term, and I do call them short term, even though divorce can last many months or even a couple of years, funds to pay for your legal expenses, pay for your life expenses, there is an interesting solution called divorce funding. And in this episode, I'm going to interview Nicole Noonan. She is the CEO of New Chapter Capital, and she's going to give us an overview of how divorce funding works, what it's like, and give us the process. And if this is something that sounds like it may be a good fit for you and your situation, I highly encourage you to reach out and give her firm a call. And so without further ado, here is my interview with Nicole. Today we have Nicole Noonan. She is the CEO of New Chapter Capital, which is a firm that deals with a topic we haven't covered in a while, but a very important one, which is divorce funding. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Why don't you tell us what New Chapter Capital does? What is divorce funding? What does that mean?
So New Chapter Capital and divorce funding provides liquidity for individuals going through a divorce that would not otherwise have access to it. So we provide in advance a litigant's potential settlement. And the advance can be used for legal fees, expert costs, and for living expenses. And this is something that I saw in my own practice a real need for, where one spouse had more money than the other, and they cut up their credit cards and try to back them into taking a settlement less than what they're entitled to.
And so to simplify, I mean, liquidity is money. So you're giving them the funds to get through the divorce process.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the objective then is to level the playing field, it sounds like.
Right. So they can go out and hire the right attorneys, the right experts. You know, we don't want someone to have their husbands, I'm going to use generalization, their husbands go out, they're the money, the bread earners, they're going to go hire top counsel for their divorce, and the wife is going to have to go borrow money for friends or family and go hire someone who's fresh out of law school and this is their first divorce case. We don't want that. We want them to have equal representation, and that's what they're entitled to.
Got it. So I think a lot of people, I mean, anyone who's not the primary breadwinner in the house, if there is one, probably is at a pretty significant disadvantage, at least from my experience, in terms of having the available money to go and start paying legal fees. You know, I was just talking to someone yesterday and they had some money in savings, but basically drained all of it within the first month or so of the process. How does someone know that they'll be a good candidate? How do you figure out whether they should contact you? Kind of give me the overview as though someone should evaluate divorce funding versus using credit cards or borrowing from family and friends, as you mentioned? How does someone think about that?
So we always say people save for their wedding. You plan for the wedding, the dress, the cake, the caterers, the band. When it comes time to divorce, no one's sitting there planning for a rainy day divorce. So if you don't have access to your own money, you're going to have to go to friends or family potentially, or you're going to have to take out credit cards. Now, that being said, not everyone needs to have an attorney. Not everyone needs a full blown litigation. I always say it's best to sit down with your spouse if you can, open up a bottle of wine, have dinner and say, hey, these are my 10 non-negotiables. What are your 10? And hash it out as much as possible, because you'd rather send your child to college than send your attorney's child to college. But that's not always a possibility. That being said, if you're fighting over, there's case law, very interesting things. I get it for animals. People want to fight over animals, but fighting over your baseball card collection or your Nintendo set, or fighting over, something without, no value. It's really not worth, putting that fight on something like that. So what we say is, if there's an asset, so usually it's a house, and how it's going to be divided. And if you can't work it out, or if there's a custody dispute and you can't work it out, then you're probably going to need to retain some sort of expert, whether it's an attorney or a mediator. And at that point, it's going to be divided. The money's going to be divided. And that's when we come in. That's when we can say, hey, okay, let's figure out what you're going to be entitled to and what we could potentially advance you. So you can go and unfortunately, sometimes have that fight with the attorneys and the accountants and whatnot.
So what stage then are people normally coming to you, or do you normally help people? Are these people who are at the beginning stages of the divorce, so still literally maybe at the kitchen table and haven't really started the process yet in some cases, or are they generally kind of early or midway through the process? How does someone know the timing in terms of when to contact you?
Shawn, I've been doing this for 15 years between my own practice, mediation, and for divorce funding. So I get people from all over the country at all stages of the divorce, whether they're looking to say, hey, I'm looking to hire an attorney in California. Who would you recommend? Now, I don't give them one. I give them a list of people. And then they may come back to us and say, hey, you know what? I want to hire Joe something such, and I want your funding. Let's start an application. That, there's also the people that are on the eve of trial, and I get a call from an attorney saying, hey, we thought this was going to be a $10,000 case. Looks like it's going to cost another $30,000 to take it through trial because no one's settling at the courthouse steps. That's when we come in. Depends on the case.
And does someone need to have an attorney as part of this? Or if I'm going through the process, representing myself or more or less by myself, am I a candidate for funding?
Yeah, no, you have to have an attorney. We don't represent any people that are representing themselves.
No, fair enough. So let's say I figure out that there may be an option for me to get some funding. How does the process work?
Try to make it as simple as possible, because honestly, money is stressful. Divorce is stressful. So talking about money and divorce is super stressful. So we send an application to the firm to work with the client and the firm of what they're looking for in terms of funding and what the marital asset pool is. And the reason we send it to the firm is not their first rodeo, but it's potentially the client's first rodeo. Documents are sent to us. It goes to our underwriters. We try to make it a decision as quickly as possible. Again, because it's a stressful time. So usually within 3 business days, unless we're asking for more documentation. And of course, the more complex the divorce, the longer it may take. But traditionally, it's 3 business days. Once the client's approved, documents are sent to the client. We do ask for the client to review with the independent counsel. So it does not need to be a matrimonial attorney, cannot be the matrimonial attorney you're using, but can be any attorney that's practicing within your state. Documents are then sent back to us, and the whole process can be done in as little as 2 weeks. Usually the longest portion of it takes place. We're trying to find counsel to review the documents with you and get them in, especially in light of the time we're living in right now. So
And, if you were to lend me, and I'm going to make up a very low number, but just for the sake of example, if you were to lend me $100, the divorce process could be another month or it could be another for 3 years. When do I have to pay that money back?
So we get it. Unlike a credit card, we have to worry about monthly payments. We understand. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and the people I work with have been doing this for a very long time. It may take 2 years to sell a house right now. So you may decide, I'm going to get 50% of the house, you're going to get 50% of the house, and we'll have to wait until you get the house sold. Unlike a law firm where they're not really willing to wait, and if they are, it's also not great. And as an attorney who's done this before, where we would say, okay, we'll carry this case, and hopefully at trial, at settlement, we'll get repaid. And it takes another 2 years, 3 years, especially during the housing crisis, for us to get repaid. So it's not great business for the law firms, but let them do what they do best. Let them represent you, and let us fund you. So you take the pressure off them and the pressure off yourself.
And then is there an interest rate, or is it a fee, or how do you kind of charge someone? How do you make money, basically, is what I'm asking, is how does this all work?
I know. I'd love to do this as a charity. And honestly, that's my next chapter. My new chapter is hopefully being able to give back, because, I just think that there's such a need for this, for people who don't have a lot of assets, but that really need funding to get them to their new chapter and move on. But we have a monthly fee, but nothing is due until you get to settlement. So they don't have to stress about that.
Got it. And so when you finally get to a settlement, or there's an order or something, the papers are signed, and as the assets are getting moved from one place to another is when you get your repayment.
Exactly.
One of the common issues that comes up with a lot of my clients is people have different levels of their credit, let's just say. Some people have done a great job over time maintaining that credit. Others are in between. How do you manage or navigate that process if I'm kind of looking at my options?
Yeah. So we do a credit check. That being said, we get it. I mean, we get that not everyone has built up their own credit history because their spouse was the one that did all the banking, was the main breadwinner, and was the main signee on the credit card. We do have other people that have been experiencing job losses or unemployment right now, and they just can't maintain that level of credit. Again, we get it. So it's not something that is our main decision-making standard for divorce funding.
You'd mentioned something important is oftentimes if you need funding for your legal fees, you may also need funding just to sustain life. Does your funding include or allow for use for fees that are outside of your attorney?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we understand. First and foremost, we want to make sure you're able to get this divorce done. So we want to make sure that your attorney and your experts are paid. So whether that's forensic accountant, anyone that you're going to need, an appraiser, someone you're going to need to get your divorce settled. But we also fund for living expenses for clients. So we want to make sure that based on what our assessment is, you're going to need X amount, and if there's anything left over, we'll say, okay, if you would like to draw down, we will fund for living expenses as well, because some people just need to move out, and they need to get a new apartment, or they need to have money to go back to school so they can start their new chapter. And I think those are sometimes the most rewarding fundings that we do, because people come back to me and say, hey, I went back to school, I got a degree, and I'm starting a new job, and I'm on my own 2 feet, and I'm never again going to let someone maintain a bank account and know nothing about my finances. So those are really sometimes my favorite fundings that we do.
You're based in New York, right?
Correct.
I'm in Texas myself, as many of the listeners know, but we have people from all over the country. Where do you work? Can any state apply, or almost any state?
Yep, we're all over the U.S. We're both East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. We're there. And my biggest hurdle is for people to know that we're there.
And what's the best way for someone to contact you?
So we have a website, it's new, NEW, chapter, CHAPTER, capital CAPITAL.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We also have an Instagram at Divorce Funding. We're all over, but yes, New Chapter Capital is probably the best. Or they can call us 212-404-7807.
Well, Nicole, thank you very much for coming on. I think it's a great option. It's one of the biggest and most common topics that I speak with people about is trying to figure out what options they may have in terms of getting money to fund legal fees, particularly if they have a spouse that has been manipulative or controlling or just kind of limiting access, as you started the conversation with. So I think it's a great product and service that you offer. And thank you very much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much. Really had a great time.
Now, before you go, I want to make sure you get some really important information. I'm going to tell you about a few things that may be of interest to you. First, as a favor, is if you could leave a review. If you're on the iTunes store, leave a review on iTunes, or if you search Divorce and Your Money on a website called Trustpilot or on Google, you can leave a review there. It's quick, it's anonymous, it only takes a few seconds, and I really, really appreciate your feedback. I have lots of reviews on iTunes and on Trustpilot, and I appreciate hearing your stories. Also, on divorceandyourmoney.com, you can get lots of great information. Of course, you can book a 30-minute strategy session directly with me. There's two types of strategy calls you can book. Just a normal strategy session where we discuss the questions that are most pressing to you, regardless of where you are in the divorce process, be at the beginning, towards the end, or in the middle. Doesn't really matter. There's lots of great information we can cover during that strategy call. And also, we have a document review call. It's been one of the biggest things that we've done over the past year, which is you can send me your documents, be it your financial affidavit, a settlement agreement, or other documents that you would like for me to review. And then I review those in advance of the call. And then we get to discuss them in depth as part of a strategy session and get specific answers to some of the specific documents and things that you are considering. Also, for those who need ongoing support, we do have a few options for ongoing support. But regardless, it all starts with a coaching call that you can book at divorceandyourmoney.com. Don't forget to also get a copy of my new book. It's called Divorce and Your Money: How to Avoid Costly Divorce Mistakes. It's available on my website or also on Amazon. You just look me up and make sure you get the new edition. It is filled with excellent information regarding the divorce process, and I know that you will find it helpful. And once you've read the book, be sure to leave a review. That really helps me. I appreciate your feedback, and it also helps other people as they try and find this information. And finally, last but not least by any means, is on the store at divorceandyourmoney.com. If you click on the store button, you can get access to the full archive of podcast episodes. There's over 200 episodes. And what's great about the store link is that the episodes are organized in neat buckets. And they're organized by topic. So it's very easy to follow along with the information. And it is easy to pick out the key topics that matter most to you. And you can get all of those podcast episodes in the store. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Shawn Leamon, MBA and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. Take care.